Hi, and welcome back to Arno TV. I'm your Liverpool host Arno, coming back to you with another video. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video is we've just learned that from the 2nd of December, when the English national lockdown allegedly ends, what's actually happening is we're going into a tier system, okay? But we're still operating, for those of you who are watching this from outside of the UK, before we went into this English national lockdown for 4 weeks, we were on a tier system which basically operates rather like a traffic light system, from red being the highest tier to green being the lowest tier. And we have, 1, 2 and 3 tiers, okay? Now, prior to the lockdown, there were all sorts of tough in the tiers. For example, my area, as people who have watched my videos all along will know, that in my area where I live in the UK, in West Yorkshire, we have actually been on a local lockdown since July. Okay, since July. We only had roughly around 5 to 6 weeks after the first lockdown ended with any kind of freedom before we were pushed into a local lockdown here, okay? So now we're going back into tier 3, which is what we started before we went into the English national lockdown. But this time the tiers have been strengthened, so there's even more regulations than before. Before the bars and restaurants could remain open till 10 o'clock in the evening, calling last orders and things at 9 o'clock in the evening. But now, in this new Tier 3 regulation, they're not allowed to open at all. And that's going to be reviewed on the 16th of December. So the only difference between being in the English 4-week national lockdown and the tiered approach that we're going into is some of us, which will be me, will have to go back to work. Other than that, everything remains the same. You can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. Let's go have a look over on Yorkshire Live on the internet. Let's have a look at what they say about this, okay? Now, I'm just going to go over to the internet, so bear with me a second. Right, okay, so this is Yorkshire Live, okay? This is, the part of country I live in. So, Tier 3 for Kirklees, Bradford, Calderdale, Leeds and Wakefield. Matt Hancock confirms. And just for those who don't know, that's all the local councils in West Yorkshire, okay? All of us are in Tier 3. That's Huddersfield, which basically is Kirklees, Calderdale, which is Halifax and the surrounding areas, Bradford, Wakefield and Leeds are all going to be basically in, as it says here, facing the toughest level of the new coronavirus measures. Now, let's see what they're about. The whole of West Yorkshire is facing the toughest level of coronavirus restrictions once the national lockdown ends next week. Health Secretary Matt Hancock confirmed in a statement in the House of Commons this morning, the 26th of November, which is today, that Huddersfield, which is, as I said, Kirklees, Calderdale, Leeds, Bradford and Wakefield will all be placed into Tier 3 on December the 2nd. The tougher new system was outlined by the Prime Minister with his COVID winter plan, and Boris Johnson, has remained defiant in his stance that the country will revert back to a tiered approach in December, despite some calls for an extension to the second national lockdown. Mr. Hancock's announcement this morning means that residents of the whole of West Yorkshire will be under tight restrictions in the lead up to Christmas. In a crushing blow for the hospitality industry, which obviously is pubs and restaurants across the whole region, will be forced to close unless they can operate a takeaway or provide a delivery service. Separate households will be banned still from mixing indoors, so no change there. In hospitality, well, there's no hospitality open, venues and private gardens. The rule of 6 will apply outdoor public space, such as parks, and residents will be advised against travelling in and out of the area. Hairdressers and personal care services will be permitted. Okay, being placed in tier 3 also means West Yorkshire will be eligible for rapid lateral flow testing, coronavirus testing, which results will be available in around 20 minutes without the need for a lab. Now, this is very interesting, isn't it? Now, anyone who's watched the videos that I've put out in the last week or so, right? We covered on Arno TV an interview with Dr Mike Yeadon a week ago, okay? And he was talking about that there was a major problem with the testing, okay? And what he called it, not me, Dr Mike Yeadon, remember, the former scientific advisor to Pfizer that was on the Ian Collins show 1 week ago on Talk Radio. What did he say? He was calling this a pandemic of false positive PCR tests. And what he was saying, if you remember, was that the army that had been testing in Liverpool were using this new lateral flow test, okay? And there were massive differences in the results. Now, what I'm going to do is let's just have a little watch of Arno TV from a week ago with what we were talking about with this lateral flow test, okay? And then we're going to come back and pick up on this exact point here, okay? So I'm just going to turn the music down, and this is only a week ago on Arno TV, and as always, I'm going to leave the link in the description to my own broadcast and the Ian Collins show that Dr Mike Yeadon was on. So I advise everybody to watch this, and then we're going to pick up on this point of lateral flow testing, okay? So just bear with me a minute. So let's just have a look at what we were talking about on Arno TV 1 week ago. Now, if you remember, I did a video the other day about the army force testing children in schools. Well, the army have been in Liverpool since last week, okay? And the army have carried out 90,000 tests. 90,000 tests just from the army, okay? Now, what they've not told you is the army are using a different kind of test. They're not using the PCR test. They're using something called a lateral flow test. Now, we'll get into the differences of the tests in a moment, okay? But what the army have discovered, and according to Mike Yeadon, that the latest results, according to Dr Mike Yeadon, not me, the former advisor the former scientific advisor to Pfizer, is saying that when the results have come back, there's little or no coronavirus, okay? He's saying about 0.4% has come back on the tests, okay? And this is of a total of 120,000 tests, okay, with this lateral flow test. So 90,000 has been done by the army, and the remainder has been done by the other health authorities, okay? And they have got 0.4% of people testing positive. Now, what this shows straight away is there's a problem with one of the tests, okay? There's a big problem here, okay? Now, the next part of this phase of this new lateral test, okay, before we go into that, I'm just going to explain the difference between the tests, okay? Because I've had this discussion with friends and family about this PCR test, okay? Now, what the PCR test is, for anybody that doesn't know, what they do is they take a sample from someone and they amplify the sample many, many, many times, okay? And what they're looking for in your sample is RNA that they say is associated with the virus, okay? Now, the difference between that and the lateral flow test is the lateral flow test is searching for a protein that's on the outside of the virus. So it works, according to Mike Yeadon, Dr Mike Yeadon, the former scientific advisor to Pfizer, not a crackpot. It works apparently, according to him, rather like a pregnancy test, okay? Now, the next part of this phase, or with this new lateral flow test, is to put it into hospitals. Now, one of Mike Yeadon's colleagues, another doctor, not a crackpot, another doctor called Claire Craig, is suggested that, because what they want to do with this testing of the lateral flow is test on the hospital staff. And what she's saying is, why, as well as doing that, why don't you test on the patients that have been tested for that have had a PCR test and tested positive. Okay, but they don't want to do that. Okay, but this shows, according to Mike Yeadon, that there's a major problem with one of the tests because there's huge differences in results. Now, according to what Dr Mike Yeadon said, again, not me, Dr Mike Yeadon, the former scientific advisor to Pfizer, that I'm going to post the interview in the link in the description, what he said is, according to the ONS statistics, which, by the way, might I add, are based on the predictions based on PCR tests about this hotspot in the northeast, this lateral flow test is showing that the PCR predictions that the ONS have put out are 5 to 10% higher than what the lateral flow test is showing. Okay? So this should demonstrate there's a major problem with the testing. Okay? Now, if this Dr. Mike Yeadon is right, and I'm not saying that he is right, I'm just telling you what he said. Okay, that will mean that we could have potentially shut down the economy and wrecked everybody's jobs and livelihoods on figures that are wildly inaccurate. I mean, this is unbelievable. So that's what we were talking about on Arno TV 1 week ago. Okay, 1 week ago we were talking about this on Arno TV. Now, as we've just shown on that, which test is right then? Okay, because now they're rolling out the lateral flow test, going to be rolling it across West Yorkshire. So which of those tests is right then? Because now you switch to the lateral flow test, okay? But all the previous predictions and data, as Mike Yeadon, the former scientific advisor to Pfizer, has brought up, were based on, the ONS predictions were based on PCR tests. So, which of these tests is right? Because if Mike Yeadon is right, all these tougher restrictions are coming in when the figures are wildly inaccurate. Now, are people not concerned about this? About what the hell is going on? It's very convenient, isn't it, that this PCR test is now not being used to test people, and I think people should be asking our leaders and our politicians to answer some serious questions about this, okay? Which of these tests is right? Because you've been telling us all along, all these predictions and results on testing has been based on PCR tests. Did you not think I wouldn't notice that you'd now switched to the lateral flow test, which you'd done in Liverpool, and now you're going to be doing that here in West Yorkshire? I mean, what on earth is going on here? We are not being told the facts here, and our government is not being transparent with us one little bit on this. So we're going to go out of a national lockdown into this much more restricted tier 3 system. We've already got the government parroting the idea of freedom passports and testing people twice a week, that, only then will they allow you to go outside and lead any kind of relatively normal life, okay? And at what point are they going to start charging us for these tests as well? I mean, think about this. Where is this going? Because we have been told, we have been told all along about the testing, okay? And the fact, and they have been using the PCR testing. So, are they now saying that the lateral flow test is right and the PCR test is wrong? Okay, that's all I'm asking, because this is really not starting to make sense now to me. They're just changing the goalposts and hoping that people don't notice. We covered this on Arno TV a week ago. I can't believe that I've just shown you my own channel from what we broadcast a week ago to highlight something that they're putting out in the media and no one's talking about. I mean, what on earth is going on here? Seriously, what on earth is going on? Because if you're now telling us that the lateral flow tests are right and the PCR tests are wrong because you're not using them anymore, you need to start basically justifying these lockdowns. And as I said, I am going to leave the link again to that interview that went out on Talk Radio with Dr Mike Yeadon, the former scientific advisor to Pfizer, okay, that he did an interview, as I said, a week ago on Talk Radio, you know, one of the few broadcasters that actually questions things. So I'm going to leave the link to that there again. And I'm also unbelievably going to leave the link to my own channel where we discussed these tests a week ago, okay? A week ago, okay? And people wonder why I'm concerned. People wonder why I'm asking questions about, you know, for people asking questions about what's going on and encouraging people to start asking, you know, questions and getting these people to justify and back up, you know, what they're doing. You know, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. So, I mean, if you've enjoyed this video and you want to see more, then please like and subscribe to the channel. And once you do, please ring the notification bell so you can be informed of forthcoming videos that I'm going to put out. And as I said, there's going to be a lot more coming. So, you know, until I return, stay rock and roll, as always. Take care of yourselves. Look after your friends, your family and your loved ones. And until I'm back, take care, and thank you so much for supporting the channel as well. You know, all the new subscribers, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much. I'll be back soon. Until I am, then you guys, please take care.